Hello, welcome to our first in the series of Workplace Relations on Demand. I'm Lisa, this is my colleague Sally. We work in workplace relations at the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Today we're going to talk about some of the major changes coming from the 2018 legislation for Victorian long service leave, as well as some of the frequently asked questions we're dealing with here at the Chamber. So Sally, we've obviously seen a big change with the new piece of legislation coming through late last year. What have been the key changes for employers?
Yes, Lisa. So we've had a shift to the new 2018 Act late last year. Previously, obviously, the 1992 piece of legislation was in play for quite some time. So some of the key changes we've seen is a drop in terms of when employers are entitled to take long service leave. It can now be taken after 7 years of continuous service. Previously, it was 10. The other key change that we've seen is that long service leave can be taken for a minimum of 1 day per occasion. So previously it needed to be taken in one block unless there was a separate agreement between the employer and the employee. So 1 day of long service leave can be taken. Another really key change is in relation to unpaid parental leave. Previously, service on unpaid parental leave did not count for long service leave purposes, but now up to 52 weeks of service will count for long service leave purposes. After that, it doesn't count, but it will not break continuity of service, which is consistent with the 1992 Act as well. And another key change is that if an employee is terminated or resigns and is re-employed within 12 weeks, this will also not break continuity of service.
And this is an interesting change, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because previously, if an employee resigned, that finished the service period and you were done with it. Whereas now employers, I guess, are faced with that 12-week window of having to reinstate effectively the service.
That's right. So, and finally, one of the other key changes is in relation to transfer of business. Again, previously it was only tangible assets of the business that were taken into account, whereas now we're also seeing intangible assets being taken into consideration.
Yeah. So, some fairly significant changes coming through.
Yes.
There's also another significant change in terms of the introduction of criminal penalties for non-compliance with the Act. So it is really pivotal for employers to ensure that they are fully across the changes coming through these pieces of legislation and the administration of those. Another question that we get asked about is the casual employment, and do casual employees accrue long service leave? So as a general rule, the answer is yes. The Act talks to employees rather than types of employees, so it's not breaking down that part-time, full-time or casual entitlement. The employment does, however, of course, need to be somewhat regular or systematic as a general rule. While there are exceptions, there shouldn't be more than a 12-week gap between engagements for it to meet that test around regular and systematic. And of course, they still do need to meet all of those other tests around getting completion of the 7 years continuous service as well to access the entitlement.
So yeah, effectively, if there's a gap of 12 weeks or more when you're employing your casuals, you need to have a look at whether or not that will break continuity of service.
Exactly.
So another big question we get asked, Lisa, is in relation to cashing out. And if an employer and an employee agree, can they just pay out long service leave rather than taking it as time off?
We do see this question a lot, and it's an interesting one because we've seen cashing out provisions come through for annual leave, of course, under the National Employment Standards. The answer, however, with long service leave, it's a hard no. There is not cashing out during employment. So the history to that, I suppose, is this legislation is designed for employees to take a break after a long period of service as opposed to any form of cash payment. The only mitigation or change to that would be if the employment ends, then of course any amount that was owing but not taken would then be paid out as cash.
Okay. So one final question that we often get asked is about when employees need to take long service leave. And I guess in terms of employers, and if you're in a situation where you want to direct your employees to take long service leave, you can, but you will need to provide 12 weeks written notice. If an employee makes a request to take their long service leave, you are required to grant that request as soon as practicable, unless you've got reasonable business grounds for refusal. So they're really two key things to keep in mind.
And it's a similar test, I suppose, we're looking at for the taking of annual leave and other types. Is it reasonable?
That's right.
That expectation that it is approved, if so. Okay, well, thank you, Sally. That wraps up our session for today and some of the key changes coming through and questions we're dealing with here at the Chamber at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks.